Welcome to Across Africa. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith. This is France 24's weekly roundup from across the continent. And coming up in this edition, Central African Republic's new president is sworn in. With some international peacekeepers set to head home this year, he now faces the daunting task of rebuilding the nation. Also, 17 democracy activists are jailed in Angola, charged with rebellion over the public reading of a book. The opposition says it shows the extent of political repression in the country. And in Kenya, refugees keep up a gruelling athletics training schedule in the hope of being selected for a unique team that will head to the Rio Olympics. Well, first to South Africa and a victory for the opposition. A court ruled that President Jacob Zuma failed to uphold the constitution by failing to pay back some of the millions of dollars in state funds used in a lavish upgrade for his private home.
Unanimous in their condemnation, 11 Constitutional Court judges strike the gavel on Jacob Zuma's trial.
The president thus failed to uphold, defend and respect the Constitution as the supreme law of the land.
A financial blow for the scandal-plagued leader. Up against the clock, the South African president has 105 days to repay some of the $16 million spent on non-security upgrades to his Nklanda residence.
The National Treasury must determine the reasonable costs of those measures implemented by the Department of Public Works at the President's Ngandla homestead that do not relate to security, namely the visitor center, the amphitheater, the cattle kraal, the chicken run, and the swimming pool only.
In response to the verdict, the government released a statement saying the president will reflect on the judgment and its implications on the state and government, and will, in consultation with other impacted institutions of state, determine the appropriate action. Compounding public discontent, the saga is just the latest in a series of scandals to have rocked Jacob Zuma over the years, including a rape trial, allegations he took bribes from arms dealers, and more recently, claims a family close to him had influence over political appointments. Throwing the spotlight on institutional shortcomings, the court ruled the National Assembly failed to hold Zuma accountable. Although the ANC majority in Parliament will almost certainly close ranks, the opposition has pressed forward with calls for the president to step down and renew the push for his impeachment.
Central African Republic's new president was sworn in this week. Faustin Archange Touadéra's electoral victory last month was seen as a step towards reconciliation in the wake of sectarian violence that broke out in the country in 2013. He now faces the challenge of building peace in one of the world's poorest nations.
At Bangui's largest stadium, security was tight. People queued for hours to find a place to sit or stand. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. There was a warm welcome for interim President Catherine Samba-Panza as she arrived to pass over power to Faustin Archange Touadéra.
It's the end of the crisis. It's the end. Everyone here has been expecting it, but now it's here. So I'm optimistic and think this is the end of the problems in our country.
The new president was sworn in front of more than 150 foreign dignitaries before calling for a minute's silence in honor of the thousands of victims in CAR's conflict. The minute ended with a cannon blast and rapturous applause. People came to the stadium to hear what their new president planned for the future. No one left disappointed.
He promised people here in the Central African Republic lots of reforms like the economy, the agricultural and energy sectors, because energy is the source of development. What we expect from him is that he acts on all the promises that he made to the people here.
This is a new chapter for Central African Republic, and time now for Faustin Touadéra to get to work.
French troops, later followed by a UN mission, intervened in CAR to help stem the violence. Well, with reconciliation efforts now underway, they're set to pull out by the end of the year. But, as France 24's Fernand Van Tetz reports, the country still faces a host of problems.
A new president for the Central African Republic, and the moment to announce an end to the French intervention in the country.
In the space of 2 years, with a reduced but perfectly adaptable force, the French army has been able to complete all the objectives it was assigned and is ready to hand over to the UN and European Union missions in the Central African Republic. I can confirm the end of Operation Sangaris at the end of 2016.
The inauguration of Faustin Archange Touadéra marks the first elected leader in office since a March 2013 coup by the Muslim Seleka militia. France sent a force of 1,600 troops to the Central African Republic in December 2013, following an explosion of interreligious violence. The Seleka takeover led to the creation of Christian anti-Balaka militias. Thousands were massacred on both sides. Under international pressure, the Seleka's leader stepped down, and Catherine Samba-Panza was named interim president at the start of 2014. France extended its mission in February of that year, but months of violence followed, and the country is now effectively partitioned, despite the presence of 11,000 UN peacekeepers and 1,000 French troops. The mission was also stained when a UN inquiry found that French soldiers encouraged children as young as 7 to take part in oral sex in exchange for water, food or money. The peace is still fragile, but the country was deemed safe enough for the Pope to visit in November last year. But a humanitarian crisis is ongoing. Almost 500,000 people, the majority of them Muslims, live as refugees in neighbouring countries. Another 460,000 are displaced within the country.
An Angolan court has sentenced 17 youth activists to between 2.5 and 8.5 years in prison. This over their organisation of a book reading. The judge ruled that they were guilty of criminal association and rebellion. The opposition sees this as a crackdown on political dissent.
Rapper Luati Berao is one of the most famous activists among the 17 who were sentenced on Monday. He will be sent to jail for 5.5 years for rebellion against the president, criminal association and falsifying documents. The others were sentenced to between 2 and 8 years in prison. They all called on President Dos Santos to leave power. He's ruled the country for nearly 4 decades. We spoke to an activist in Luanda who's very close to those who were sentenced on Monday.
It is sad and unfortunate that we already foresaw these results. It's sad because it only shows that we are really living in a dictatorship. They know where we live. They know what we do. They know who we talk to. They are trying to silence us, the youth.
The 17 activists were arrested last year while they were discussing a book entitled From Dictatorship to Democracy. According to Amnesty International, the Angolan government has a very poor human rights record. Analysts say the authorities are currently nervous. The country is a major oil producer, and its economy has been hard hit by the fall in oil prices. This month, Dos Santos said he would step down in 2018, but the announcement was received with skepticism, following similar promises in the past.
High up in Kenya's rugged Ngong Hills, refugees are taking a run at the chance to be selected for a unique team for the Rio Olympics. Hand-picked athletes from Kenya's vast refugee camps had their eyes set on racing in Brazil in August.
In the foothills of Kenya's Ngong Hills, a group of athletes are braving the scorching sun as they train for the Rio Olympics. Until 1 month ago, they weren't eligible to compete, having fled their war-torn countries to live as refugees in Kenya's Dadaab and Kakuma camps. Now they've got a chance to join Team Refugee Olympic athletes and become the first stateless athletes to compete at the Games.
I will feel so proud to be there and to be recognized as South Sudanese, because I believe South Sudanese, most of the Games, world champion, they have never been there. But maybe this year at least.
25-year-old Muhammad Abu Bakr fled the war in Somalia over 20 years ago. He's aiming to take on his countryman Britain's Mo Farah in the 5,000-metre race.
You know, Mo is just like, he's Somalian, I'm Somalian again. Again, I'm very happy about him to be like him.
Daily training sessions at this high-altitude training camp have left many of them with injuries. But both athletes and trainers are hopeful of Olympic success.
That was good. They came in when they were raw, but now we have refined them. You have seen them run like the other athletes who are training here. The only difference is the others are elite, and these ones are now following the footsteps.
Athletes from other countries like Yugoslavia and South Sudan have previously competed under the Olympic flag. But this is the first time that a refugee team will enter, which so far includes a Syrian swimmer, Congolese judoka, and Iranian taekwondo fighter.
I think it's important for those refugees to be able to take part in the Olympic. And the country they belong, they will see they have talent which have been kicked out. And they need to sit down round table and they back their own people so that they can be able to be part of the country.
Those selected for the Olympics refugee team will march to the event's 5-ring flag and anthem at Rio's opening ceremony, giving them recognition as athletes, not just refugees.
Well, that's it for Across Africa for this week. Thanks very much for joining us, and please do so again if you can. Take care.